What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Beyond the Forecast.
Hey.
We've got a full house in here today. We've got, obviously, our chief meteorologist, Jeff Edmondson. We've got Don Slater. We've got the sixth Beatle. That's what at least I call him, the sixth Beatle, Bob Bennett, our senior producer, hanging out with us. We're going to be talking a whole lot about hurricanes today. It's going to be a really fun episode, getting the whole crew together to tackle this one. Historical hurricanes.
Historical hurricanes.
Yeah.
Or hysterical ones, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hysterical hurricanes?
Yeah.
No. So we're going back to talking about the hurricanes of the 1600s, 1979. That's David, Gloria, Dennis, Floyd, Isabel, and Matthew. The special about these was phenomenal. And if you missed that, you can find that on Wavy Plus. Highly recommend to check that out. It's great. Guys did a good job on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's all about... What do we want to start with? We want to start with the...
Let's start at the beginning.
Beginning?
I'm joking about hysterical, but lots of these things were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking before we started about how there was one in the 1600s that widened, that blew open, basically, the Lynnhaven River system into what it is today. At one time, the Lynnhaven River had a log over the top of it and called it a bridge. Somewhere along the Lynnhaven River. So, and you think of the Lynnhaven River system today,
It's a huge system.
Yeah,
huge
it
network.
is. It goes right on through into Virginia Beach, into the northern half of Virginia Beach, basically.
Was the storm widened the whole system and made it larger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Simply by the amount of water that it pushed up out of the ocean and out of the Chesapeake Bay, and the wave action, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it widened it. And same way, that we have inlets blown open in the Outer Banks or in Virginia Beach. There have been inlets that have been blown open or closed up. So it was the same kind of situation.
And
So
this
essentially just erosion on a really, really quick time span with these storms.
Yeah. But on a massively powerful level, you think about that much of the map, which is affected. So, and that particular one, I think there was colonial records that went back and we were talking about that too. It was 12 feet is what the early colonists reported above normal levels. Now, they didn't have gauges then, but nonetheless.
both Don and Bob Bennett, who produced this the special, you've looked at a lot of different things for all of these storms. Obviously, the more recent ones from the satellite era, we have more data for. But what was one thing that popped out for you besides the facts that you've said for the 1600 storm that you discovered when you were doing this research?
Well, we talked about that. There were two big storms that happened before the revolution even happened, and that was the 1667 storm where the bay rose and the Lynnhaven River system widened. But the other one was the 1749 hurricane. That's when Willoughby Spit was formed.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it.
So
17,
imagine
okay.
that little area where a lot of people live now was formed by a storm, which of course causes concern somewhere down the road where whatever nature gives us, nature can take back. And Willoughby Spit is still extremely small and extremely vulnerable, just like the Outer Banks or anywhere along the coast. But we talked about that a lot too, is that other storm that formed that part of Willoughby Spit.
Yeah.
You feel maybe more protected in Willoughby Spit because you're not on the ocean directly.
Right.
False sense of security, but you're right there.
Yeah, you're right there, and plus the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic act together in a way. And the Chesapeake Bay, there's the Atlantic Basin, huge basin, but there's also a basin going on within the Chesapeake Bay, the lower Chesapeake Bay. In other words, water gets trapped. Water gets trapped in the lower Chesapeake Bay, and the river systems running into the Chesapeake Bay. We saw that during Isabel, especially.
Yeah, it's just like a funneling in, and because Isabel acted a little weird, which we'll talk about later, that's why places like Pocosin got flooded where they normally don't. So it's a little bit of a weird thing, but that the Willoughby Spit storm, you talk about the bay rising 12 feet for the first one. In 1667, the bay rose 15 feet during the 1749 storm, and that's even more. And then it just left that behind, and then and then it just kept continuing to form after that.
That's larger than what we've seen for many of these modern storms.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's go into more of the modern era, the satellite era. We have weather satellites that are able to track these things, and that starts with Hurricane David. Brian, we have a track of this storm. We have tracks of the older storms.
Yeah, we've got tracks of
Yeah.
David to start out. Obviously the newer storms, the more recent ones.
Yes.
We kind of have that data for. But here we go. Here's David.
So this storm forming northeast of South America, moving through the Lesser Antilles, really through most of the Caribbean islands there,
Hugging
coming
the
up
East
through
Coast.
Florida and then coming up the East Coast.
Yeah.
So this is a storm that tracked well inland in our area. What is a notable thing about this storm?
Well, with that, Don and I discussed it. We had a story in our hurricane tracking the tropic special that it spawned 2 very powerful tornadoes on the peninsula. And they were both
Surprisingly powerful tornadoes.
Yes, EF3s. One in Hampton, one in Newport News. There was also another one in Northern Virginia that was also an EF3, and it left a couple $1 million in damage for both tornadoes on the peninsula. So that's why you always talk about being east of the storm and being in trouble during, in the northeast quadrant or in the east side of the storm. That's exactly the situation that you're looking at.
Do you think that the tornadoes were stronger when we look at that track because this storm was so weak in terms of its tropical characteristics? It was really just an area of low pressure. Do you think it was able to tap into fronts and other air masses?
Probably. I don't know what the specific weather situation was, whether there were fronts or other air masses. An EF3 tornado is very, very unusual. It's unheard
Yeah.
of with any kind of a landfalling hurricane or tropical storm. So I would think that there's probably something else out there, but I don't have charts in front of me.
Right, we don't have this. Well, we can find them
Yes.
somewhere. Yeah,
I mean,
On the
a
computer.
lot of most of the destruction happened in Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, where you're talking about a couple thousand people dying in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and whatnot. And then when it moved up the coast, then you were looking at a Category 2, which hit Savannah, and then it moved up as a Category 1 and basically started dissipating. But I remember living in Pennsylvania. I was only 10 years old, and this is one of the storms that actually sparked my interest in weather. And I remember it's like, okay, I'm terrified of this. A hurricane doesn't come through Pennsylvania like this.
Right.
But and then subsequently you watch all the history of these storms, they usually do end up going that way, which we'll talk about with like Gloria and whatnot. But David, it was one of those storms that was interesting, first of all, because it was the second male name. 1979 was the first year for male names. The first one was Bob.
Of
And I've
course.
since been retired, and so is David because of all the deaths. But yeah, that's one of the storms that kind of sparked my interest. And there was another male name storm after that was actually pretty powerful, Frederick, which came up parts of the East Coast as well.
One thing I forgot to mention too, we jumped from the 1600s to 1979, but we skipped 1933.
Yes.
And you interviewed someone that was in the 1933
Yes.
storm. That was in the special.
Yes.
Yeah, that was in the special, and watching the special, I didn't see it until the special ran, until it came out and was edited. Yeah, it was nice to see that again.
Yeah.
That lady, I remember speaking with her, and just kind of putting into your mind what Ocean View was like and what all the pictures that you have from that era and from the flooding of downtown Norfolk, for example, knowing what that looked like and knowing that, for example, in Ocean View, what happened, that was the big resort area at the time.
Okay.
And Virginia Beach was basically just Princess Anne County. And yes, there was some resort property out there and hotels, etc.
Yeah, but not like how it is now.
No.
Yeah.
But the first line of cottages in the 1933 storm, the first line of cottages got destroyed, totally destroyed. But that debris from the first line of cottages got pushed up against the second line of cottages and nearly destroyed those two. Those were probably condemned. Remember, these are cottages. They're not built with. They were not built with up to code that a
Or
house.
with a
would
hurricane
be.
in mind.
Yeah,
basically.
or yeah.
And not with basements or anything like that, foundations.
Exactly, not with foundations, certainly, and certainly not with basements. But anyway, and then the third line of cottages was heavily damaged by all of this debris. That's one thing to note too, is that wave action, as it comes in off the bay or off the Atlantic, hits stuff, and the wave action dissipates. So you don't see as much wave action in the second line of cottages and less in the third line of cottages. And farther inland, you see extensive flooding, but you don't see the huge waves knocking the buildings over.
Right. And downtown Norfolk also had suffered tremendous flooding. I mean, Granby Street and all those areas down there just
Major flooding.
underwater, absolutely underwater. We also had other storms in that after that era, Hazel and Donna, which were both pretty bad for the area too, and there were record wind speeds at Norfolk International Airport, which was just Norfolk Airport at the time.
Sure.
But both of those were very powerful and tremendous low pressures as well. So, and several people died in both of those storms, especially when Hazel moved up across the East Coast.
What was the year of Hazel again? Do you have that?
54.
54.
And Donna was 60.
So when we go back to David, we were just talking about that, and then we have Gloria that came up in 1985. We'll pull up that track here in a moment. Those storms, we have access to radar technology. So now we can look at where the rain bands are.
Which was again Gloria, certainly.
Gloria,
Yes.
Gloria.
Gloria, I remember quite specifically because it was, if you can imagine the coastline, and are we going to draw it?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
We're gonna
here it
draw
comes.
it.
Yeah.
Really long tracking storm too.
Anyway, what had happened with that one was that it was moving very, very close, and actually at the time it was really kind of moving due north, or even just a notch west of due north at the time as we were following it on radar.
Okay.
This is kind of a blended average of movement. And it was moving due north or even slightly west of due north, following the Outer Banks, moving up Hatteras Island. And around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, it started wobbling a bit. And what happens when a hurricane wobbles, the eye of a storm wobbles, is that it's usually either a change in wind speed or a change in forward direction. So it started wobbling a little bit, and it just gently kind of nudged on off like one tick on the compass to the northeast. And I'm going, could this be? You know, and we were following it basically. And at the time,
Right.
there weren't National Hurricane Center planes flying in and out, and really the telecommunications that we have now to let us know. And there wasn't a national, and there weren't computers then to really let us know.
No.
So the National Hurricane Center, with what it had at that point, obviously they are the experts, were the experts, and are the experts, was still predicting a much more significant hit on our area at that time. And it started just this little wobble. And we had access to, there was a radar in Patuxent River, Maryland.
Okay.
It was a naval air station there.
Did we have a radar in Hatteras?
And we had a radar in Hatteras. That was the National Weather Service radar in Hatteras.
Went right over the radome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went right on in over the top of the radar there. So we were able to follow it on in. But, you know, that's all we could do was follow it and say, okay, well, it's going this way now. That means it's going to go that way for a little while yet. But then we saw that wobble, and it started turning to the northeast, thankfully.
It didn't mean it didn't nail us, though. I mean, part of the Virginia Beach Fishing Pier disappeared out of that.
Yeah.
Part of the Virginia Beach Boardwalk was damaged out of that. But the biggest impact ended up being in places like New York City, Long Island, southern Connecticut. There were a lot of people who died from storm surge and flooding and whatnot in those areas just because of the direct hit ended up on southern Long Island. So
This was the storm that my parents talk about all the time being on the Jersey Shore, because it just went east of them, the center.
Yep.
So they kind of got spared from the worst of the surge, or really the worst of the wind too. I remember they were telling me about this storm. I was getting interested in weather in third grade, and they were like, "Oh, we had Gloria back in the day, and that was a real scary one because they didn't really know 24 hours out whether the storm was going to go a little bit more west or a little bit more east, and that could have made a big difference for at least my family on the Jersey coastline. But yeah, that flooding in Long Island, New York City, Connecticut was big time there because you had all that water getting driven in on that east side of the storm.
that's true.
Two things about Gloria too. One is from the path that you can see how North Carolina juts out into the Atlantic. North Carolina, you are basically taking the punch for Virginia.
Essentially like a
a
catcher's
lot of
mitt.
times,
You kind of
yeah.
just reach out and catch the ball. That's
Now-
what the Outer Banks is
Now
doing for
imagine
storms.
instead, so you've got that. So it moved offshore. So it stayed offshore. It was like 60 miles offshore. So we ended up having more of a northwesterly wind in a lot of cases. So instead of it pushed water in for a while. We got a lot of heavy rain out of it and a lot of wind because it was a 115-mile-an-hour storm.
That's a
over
big
Cape
storm.
Hatteras.
Yeah, that's strong.
Yeah, that's about as strong as a storm as I've ever seen.
Probably.
In my
area.
career at this latitude, this far north. Anyway, it moved offshore, so we ended up with more of a northwesterly wind. And really, that was the first time I'd ever experienced hurricane force winds that were steady.
Yeah.
Oh, like
Continuous.
sustained.
Yeah.
Sustained.
Because a lot of times it's the
75
gusts.
mile an hour winds. So yeah, exactly. And in terms of gusts, but you got
just get the puffs.
50 mile an hour winds. Occasionally gusting to 75.
Yeah.
But this one was 75 miles an hour constant. For a good length of time. So it was like opening doors. Oh, let's see what the wind is. Oh, whoa.
And you were only here 4 years at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
that was your first big hurricane.
That was the first big hurricane.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And
That's right.
actually, hasn't been one any bigger in terms of wind than that one.
Yeah.
But obviously, we did not take a direct hit or as big a hit as Isabel.
So we'll kind of use that as a little tease. We'll take a quick break.
Quick break.
And then we'll dive into the storms from 99 and the 2000s right after this.
All right, everybody, we're back. Beyond the forecast, we're talking about historical hurricanes across our area. So some fun stuff. We got the whole crew hanging out with us here. And we really left off with, we just stopped talking about Gloria, which is a big one around here. Moving on to Dennis pretty soon, but I think you had a pretty good story when it came to, what was it? Was it Gloria?
Well, yeah, Gloria had northwesterly winds and intended to push water out of the lower bay, some of the areas of the lower bay.
We can't play music on here, can we? We'll probably get in big trouble. But I'm going to play, Prince, 1999, because that's where we're going right now.
Yeah.
We're going to Dennis. You can look that up and stuff. Dennis and Floyd. Dennis, the first storm, of course, and Floyd after that. Both of these storms, big storms, and in the same year, big impacts for us.
And within 2 weeks of each other.
2 weeks?
2 weeks of each other, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but a lot of times I don't remember storms.
I got you here.
impactful.
I got you here. So Dennis, obviously
Dennis
Dennis
right
first.
there.
Dennis did not make a huge impact.
Right, but it did
Set the
set at
stage.
the stage for us. So Dennis did have peak storm winds of 105 miles an hour. There was more than $100 million in damage in North Carolina and Virginia, because if you see the path here, it did kind of it kind of
did a-
lollygagged
yeah,
off the coast.
right
and
off
the problem
Hatteras.
with lollygagging off the coast is it kicks back rain, a lot of it, and then it just kind of putzed out after that. But Dennis did set the stage for Floyd, and that was the worst of the two, I think.
Oh,
especially
yeah,
for us,
absolutely.
by
So
far.
Dennis saturated the soils in a
Yes.
way.
It's the
And
1-2
go ahead and
punch.
load the Floyd one, because I left Dennis track on that one.
Yeah.
So we can get a little combo platter on that. So you saturate the ground, you saturate the soil. The trees are now grabbing onto something that's very loose and not as strong. So now you're causing problems. So there's Dennis. Obviously, the order of them is a little off, but Dennis came through first, Floyd came
Right.
through second. Floyd tracking on more of a stronger track and bigger impact just by looking at that
and
right there.
right over us.
Right on
over
top of us.
Hampton Roads.
But the thing about it, Floyd, is too, there was a weak little front that was stuck over the top of our area. And what happens when you have a weak little front is that there's moisture convergence. And it will climb. The air, that tropical air will climb. And it will climb. And if that front doesn't move, it was right over the top of Franklin. If that front doesn't move, it could be just torrential.
This is
torrential
the exact setup with Helene last year for
Yeah.
North Carolina, Western North Carolina. It just it's like a sponge. You wring it out, all that moisture, when you're slamming a storm into a front like that.
This is the video in the special where we're on the boat going through Franklin.
Yes.
And we're
Yes.
pointing at the street sign. We're pointing at hey, there's the restaurant that opened 2 weeks ago
Andy
or 3
Fox,
weeks ago.
yeah.
Andy was on that boat. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Unbelievable.
and lots of aerial footage of just everything wiped out, everything totally flooded. The thing about this was that in the Hampton Roads cities proper, it was like it
Was this
wasn't that big. The rain wasn't that big. It was all happening with this little front that was stuck to in the western part of the region. It was a little trough line, and what happens is that it's all it is a little wind shift line. I don't remember what the winds were doing. They were basically imagine a map. It's coming in out of the southeast, and then there's a little bit of a wind difference here, and where they meet, The air has got to go somewhere. It's got to go up. It can't go down into the ground. So that's what happens. You end up in this little convergence zone that sat there and dumped huge amounts of rain on Franklin.
You told me a story a couple of years ago, and I don't know, was it Floyd or was it Isabel, where Franklin, we didn't know what was going on in Franklin.
Yeah,
was that Floyd?
That was Floyd.
That
Yeah.
was Floyd.
That was
Okay.
Floyd.
That was Floyd. Okay.
And we didn't know what was going on. The National Weather Service lost their power and lost all their communications. Remember that cell phone communications were not huge yet.
Yeah,
at
primitive,
that point.
yeah.
What year was it?
That was 99.
99.
Yeah.
So
Active season
well before
for
the
our
cell phone
area.
era was
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
something.
But who
So-
had cell phones in 99?
Yeah, there were a few, but
Yeah, a couple.
big clunky ones. You know.
Yeah. Or a car
Most-
phone, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But communications was lost between Suffolk and Franklin, and they
Yeah.
bordered each other. And the first word that we started to hear that there were problems was that there was an earthen dam on a agricultural property that somebody had to water stock, cattle, whatever, that was in danger of breaking and flooding. That sounds bad. What's going on out there that they
Yeah.
got that much rain?
That was all Blackwater River all coming down. And
Well, that wasn't. That was just heavy rain.
Oh, the dam was not connected to the river.
No, it was
Oh,
not
okay,
connected
I
to the
wasn't
river.
sure
It was
about
just
that.
on somebody's property. But it was a huge amount of water in it. Had backed up in it.
Did the person have like teeth and a big tail like a beaver?
Anyway, so that was the first we heard that there was this huge amount of rain. Plus, looking at we'd been watching the radar, but we didn't know how much rain had fallen. And then pretty soon we started to get these horrendous reports out of the Franklin area. Huge amounts of rain.
12 feet deep in flooding in some places. There's one other area that got nailed, and Newport News got 16 inches of rain, but that was paled in comparison, if you think about it, maybe not to those folks at that point, but as compared to Franklin, which, I mean, they're still recovering in some places. They've been rebuilding for
I'm
years.
sure there are watermarks on the buildings
Yeah.
in downtown Franklin.
Yeah. On the older ones, there
Yeah.
probably still is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're running low on time. Isabel.
Isabel.
We can't summarize this
Isabel
all
will
in 2
always be the
minutes.
big one, and that's why we kind of saved that one for last, because you saved the best, or in this case, the worst for last. 2003. That was probably the worst one we've seen in a very long time.
Since 1933, easily. One thing I remember too about I got here at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning to cover it, and I didn't leave until after dark. Okay, so I was here all day, but by then it started to ease off, and the storm had moved away, and our studios are in Portsmouth. We go to everybody's house. Okay, but we're in Portsmouth. So to get to where I had to get to, I had to go through the downtown tunnel. There was no power in the downtown tunnel, and no traffic either.
And there was no Midtown Tunnel because it had
was
flooded before
underwater.
it was closed.
Yeah, you saw that in the
To the
special.
top. Yes.
To the top.
But the
That's
downtown
Yes.
tunnel was totally pitch black, not a car in sight. And not a car in sight as I emerged and go up onto the top of the Berkeley Bridge, and there it was. It was like the city of Oz. Norfolk, downtown Norfolk, has underground electric cables, so it was the only place in the landscape that had light. The rest of the landscape was totally pitch black. Power out for everywhere except for downtown Norfolk.
And for some, power out for weeks.
Yes,
It was one of
Me.
Dominion. It was one of Dominion Energy's largest power outages ever. So.
And I don't remember what the figure was on trees down. I know it was in the tens of thousands.
Yeah,
It
this
may
is
have been.
thousands of trees. Yeah,
again-
I believe.
Again, because of a summer that had been very wet, and
Yes.
everything was already loose.
Yes, well,
So-
and also that the water stayed up for so long, so the trees were basically sitting in muck.
Yep.
So roots, they weren't holding on to anything.
How are we doing on time, Brian?
We're pretty much right at that point.
Okay.
Got to wrap it up.
Okay,
Lot of
unfortunately, because
storms,
there's
yeah.
more to talk about there, but
Totally.
there's more specials that we'll be working on too.
Yes.
That some ideas
Yep.
have already been shared. So we'll have more coming up on Beyond the Forecast about this, and also if you want to check out the special all about the historical hurricanes, you can find that on Wavy Plus. It was phenomenal. It's definitely one where you want to get a bowl of popcorn and say, "All right,
Yeah.
Yeah, but
it
I'm
was- it was
hysterical.
cool."
I'm hysterical about these historical hurricanes.
And
This
Don-
is very interesting to put together. It was very, very fascinating. We have a lot more that we still need to cover someday.
Yes,
So-
we do. So definitely check that out. We'll be back with more on Beyond the Forecast. Thanks for watching.